But yay, you guys all found your way back to day two. Welcome back, everybody. I'd love to hear before we jump into day two content. Um, does anybody have any insights, thoughts coming up that they want to share related to their alchemy code or anything that came up from them from yesterday's class? Anyone feel like sharing? Ahas, takeaways. Okay. You don't have to. Just want to give you the chance if you feel like it. Sometimes it's nice to say it out loud, right? All good. I sent the recording out just like within the last half an hour or so. So don't worry about it. Watch it whenever you get a chance. And yeah, you'll catch up. It'll be fine. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. You guys want to just dive right in? Let's do it. So today we're talking about how we can use numerology to support our clients. Now, I'm going to share some different things that you won't necessarily know how to do today, but I want to kind of help you to realize, the further down this path you go, what the options are that are available to you. And you can always refer back to the numbers that we covered yesterday, which was basically the ruling number. Whether the number, like when you look at that guide I created for you, it's just a short little cheat sheet type idea, right? Whether you're looking at the number in the position of ruling number, which is what we did, or you're looking at it in any other place in someone's chart, the number has the meaning that it has, regardless as to where it shows up, right? So the number, like two means two. That's what it means. It doesn't matter if it's day energy, ruling number, month, year, whatever. As we go into February, which is just like a week away, February is a two energy month. So if you want a little preview of what February has in store for everybody, you can take a look at the description of the number two. January, our current month, is a one energy month. And so, same thing. You can take a look at the number one, although I don't have the number one because I don't look at number ones for ruling numbers. You can look at 10, right? There's the one and the 10 have a lot of similarities. Obviously, if you break down 10, you end up with one. So you can look at that. Now, 2025 is a unique year because it's the number nine, right? 2 + 2 + 5 is 9. So because of that, 9 is this like kind of magical number in that it's a mirror. And what I mean by that is every number that you add to 9 breaks down back to its original number. So January is the first month, right? And is denoted by the number 1. But it only happens once every 9 years that January is actually a one energy month. Next year, January will be a two energy month, right? So we're kind of in an interesting year in that the month energy gets mirrored back to itself. So, and I wanted to say that because I didn't want you to go away thinking, oh, January is always a one, February is always a two. No, the formula for month energy is the year plus the month, right? So 2025 plus 1 or 2025 plus 2. So that kind of gives you that sort of understanding to some degree. But like I said, if you're like, oh, so what does 2025 have in store for us? Well, you can go and listen to the forecast that I did where I broke it down, but you can also start to bring your own interpretations and intuition online by looking at the number 9 in the chart that I gave you guys. Like, why don't we pull it up right now and do this together and see what you guys feel might happen with the number 9. So let's start here. What do we see as opportunities for the year ahead? 9 is its quest for freedom, the seeking a deeper meaning of life, as if that isn't like one of the most dominant narratives right now. People looking for something that means something and people feeling tired of stuff that feels surface level or fake, right? That's a pretty loud theme and pattern. And contextualizing it by understanding why it's coming up can be helpful, right? Um, Idealistic, humanitarian, seeing the potential. 9 is often about raising the standard, right? So, are you guys feeling that energy for 2025? Is that feeling resonant to you? Okay. And then let's look at some of the challenges that might arise with a nine. We'll go back to the workbook. Here we go. Nine can have perfectionist tendencies to it. It can, because it has high standards, right? It's like we want to be up leveling here. So let's do it. And then it's my whole life is a rolling number nine, right? Yeah. Uh, that can lead to criticism and judgment if the world around you, people around you, aren't reaching those high standards that you have. There can also be the tendency to isolate, because it can be overwhelming when things aren't going along according to what you believe is the best and highest outcome. So, nine can bring people together, but it can also create division, right? Because it's like that feeling of frustration of like, I see what's possible here. I see what's available for you here. Like, how come you can't see it? Right. And there can be that like, right. And, what's that oh, it's snowing, how pretty. What's that saying, like success is lonely, or it's lonely at the top, or whatever, right? So it's like having these high standards, it's important to seek out people who will honor and celebrate your success. And that takes cultivating a good community and a good friend group who will be cheering you on, right? And honoring your success and celebrating your success. So these are all like important themes that are going to come up in 2025. Now, let's dive into a little bit how we can use numerology to better help ourselves as well as better help our clients. So, first, let me ask you a question. How many of you are currently like working with clients in some capacity or other? Do you have clients that you're working with at this time? Comment in the chat one, like the number one, or yes, if you are working with clients. I just want to get a sense of where we're at. Okay, yes, some of you, yes. And if you're not working with clients yet in some capacity or another, but you want to, and you want to let me know, feel free to pop that in the chat as well. Oh, beautiful. A therapist. Oh, I love that. It can be so, this is one of the things I love, whether you're a therapist or not. In, I always say one of the most healing things in the world is to be truly seen, truly seen, heard, and understood for the truth of who you are, not for what people want from you or expect out of you or need from you, but like just you. Yes, I want to. I'm rebuilding. Beautiful. So good. Okay, I love it. So I'm going to share how we can help others, our clients, our family, our loved ones, our friends using numerology. But I want you to recognize that as I'm saying that, you can use it in the same way on yourself. And you can also use it with your kids, right? I do not parent my children the same. I treat them differently because their energy is different and what works. My eldest is a seven, same as me, I'm a seven. And parenting her felt a lot more natural. Then my son comes along and he's a four. Fours and sevens are very different. They're both physical numbers, but they're very different in the way they think and process information. And the ways I parented my 7-year-old, or my seven, my ruling seven, I could not do it with him. He did not like it. He needed a lot more structure. He is the kind of kid that would need like the list to follow, and he would need lead time and like the 5-minute warning and the 10-minute warning. And he needed that. Whereas the ruling number seven, she could fly by the seat of her pants a lot easier, right? Like she could just kind of roll with things a lot easier, which was more natural to me because I tend to be that way myself, right? So I really had to like think through parenting him a lot more. And so it was helpful to know how his energy works. Okay, that's a long story, but when I'm sharing this, I want you to know there's so many places that this can apply. Okay. Okay, so number one, strengthening our intuition to be a better guide for our clients. Okay, whether or not you put numerology front facing in your business and like actively sell readings or sessions or whatever, even doing numerology behind the scenes will strengthen your intuition, your ability to recognize what energy is at play. It's so powerful how the more you kind of speak this language, you actually need to do charts less and less over time because you can start to feel what's happening. One of the unique ways that I teach numerology is I teach you how to feel the energy through the numbers. Okay. And so what that looks like is like today, you'll start by doing a calculation, like we just did for the year. 2 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. That's the calculation. And then I will teach you how to drop in and feel the energy from the standpoint of 9. And what that's going to start to do is create this association with your brain and your body of like, oh, 9 feels like this. 9 feels like this. And yes, there's context that matters and all of that, but there's going to be some common themes you're going to notice. Then eventually, even if you don't have the number 9 in front of you, you're just tapping in and feeling an energy flow. You're like, ooh, this feels familiar to me. It reminds me of X, Y, and Z. And even if you don't have a formula to calculate, you can ask yourself or the person you're working with, you know, have you noticed an influence of standards being raised in your life lately? And if they say yes, then you kind of have that as a little mark in the back of your head of like, oh, they're going through some 9 stuff right now, even though I don't know their birthday and even though I don't know what's going on. I can feel there's like some 9 vibes happening here. Okay, so now I understand what the energy's trying to do, right? And it gives you that ability to support them in that way, whether you know their birthdays or not. And then it's really fun because then you can start to like think of like, oh, different personalities or different circumstances happening and be like, ah, that feels like this energy, or that's very 3 of this person, or that's very 4 of this person, whatever it is. And you can just start to see how these numbers play out. It will strengthen your intuition because numerology is very grounded and practical. There's a couple ways that we can do this. First of all, I want to say when we make decisions, what do we count on to make a decision, right? We've been conditioned in the system that we live in, the schools that we go to rely on data, right? So it's like, look at the research, look at the data, look at the information, analyze it, which is a very mental, intellectual concept, and then make a decision. And I'm not knocking that. That's helpful, but it's a part of the equation and it's not the whole equation. And data is a lagging indicator. You have to have a precedent in order to have data. You have to have something that's already happened in order to get the data to show you the outcome you're looking for. So if you're asking yourself questions like, should I change careers? Should I start or end a relationship? Should I da 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 da? There's no data to base that on. Sure, you can look at what happened to other people, but they're not you. You can speak to, advisors, coaches, mentors, healers, teachers, of course. But again, they're not you. And a good one will obviously reflect back to you so that you can find the answers from within, because the answer is going to be different for everybody. But this is the thing. So we have data and we have intuition. And when we've been conditioned to rely excessively on data, we're looking for lagging indicators, which means there needs to have been a precedent. And oftentimes in the hard decisions, there is no precedent, right? The big decisions require intuition. They require us to find something within ourselves that we can trust, to lean into, right? Of like, oh, this feels a certain way, or I sense something, and you may not be able to put your finger on it. And other people might look at you like, are you crazy? Like, why would you make this decision? And you're like, I just got a gut feeling, or this just feels right to me, right? It's your intuition speaking. We all have it. What a lot of people don't understand is it's a muscle that you can grow and develop through tools. And there's many tools. Numerology just happens to be my favorite because it's so dynamic and there's so many ways you can use it. But you can use others too, right? So I also love tarot and oracle cards. I will use those. Like if you study different energy modalities, you can use those. People use like Akashic records or whatever. If you have one that you love, pop it in the chat because in my mind, it's like we need all the help we can get. And if you feel one that resonates with you, like just run with it because that's a good thing, right? And I've studied, I know I love it all. Like I love it all. And I've studied so many of them because you take these pieces and you pull in what speaks to you and you go with that. The reason I like numerology for intuitive development is these three pieces that I want to share with you. And arguably, you kind of need them for any intuitive development system. Okay. So I came up with three C's to make it easy to remember. So the first one is context. You need some kind of context. You need to have a question or a goal or a desire, like a core desired feeling. Like I want to feel more free. I want to feel more peaceful. I want to feel more calm. I want to feel more happy and bubbly, whatever. That's your choice. That gives you context. Or it might be a question of like, should I, or what's the right way to, or how do I move forward in my business? Or I want to increase my income, or I'd like to do more in-person sessions versus online, or I want to turn my modality and my methodology into a book. How do I go about doing this? Right? These are all context for your intuition to come in and give answers. Let's just look at the book one, for example. If someone's like, I want to write a book, you can research online how to write a book. You can buy a book on how to write a book. You can hire a coach on it. You can talk to friends who've written books. They are not you. They can give you a framework. They can give you a structure that worked for them. But if their energy is different than yours, that advice may or may not fit for you. And this is where you can bring in your intuition and the understanding of your codes. For example, if, I'm using 4 and 7 as examples, the reason I keep doing that is because I'm a 7, so I know how I work. And one of my besties is a 4. And so I always have good examples of how she works because we work together a lot on different things, right? She's very structured. She would do great to have time blocking, like a Gantt chart, like a step-by-step process, like a map it out and see the high level. And then I'm going to work on this today and then this tomorrow. And that works so well for her. 4s need some level of structure. I, as a 7, am a lot more fly by the seat of my pants for good and bad. It works for me sometimes and it's not so good other times. But I'm more of the type that's like, let me block off a day or 5 hours and don't tell me what to do and how to do it. Let me dive in and feel my way through it. And I will get way farther in that block of time than I would with a scheduled, structured system, right? Which is like, oh, can't breathe. That's how 7s feel when you try to like overly pin them down. Right? And so you can see even in that example is there's going to be certain clients that are going to, like, let's say you're a book writing coach who are like, okay, I want to write a book. And you're like, my methodology says the best way to do it is to, use the project management style. But if your client's a 7, it's not going to work for them and they're going to get frustrated and they're either going to quit, they're not going to succeed unless you can find a way to adapt your system to their energy. Okay. So this is context. The next piece is container. You need a container. Your intuition is very feminine in nature. And by that, I don't mean gendered, like it's not about women or man. It's flowy. It is like water. It is unpredictable. But one thing it needs is structure in order to feel safe. If your intuition does not feel safe, it will not speak to you. Period. End of story. It is like, and this is why intuitive practices are so helpful because we cultivate that field of safety through habit, through practice, through evidence of like, oh, what happened when I listened to my intuition yesterday, right? Oh, this C is container. When I listened to my intuition yesterday, this is what happened. And that reinforces like, oh, that was good. I'm glad I did that. Okay. Numerology is a powerful container because there's a formula. You're not making this up. Like, how many people have had intuitive hits and they're like, am I making this up? Is this real? Like, this happens to me, especially when I dream my intuitive hits, right? If I dream an intuitive hit, I'll wake up and I'll be like, okay, is this a legit guidance download hit? Or is this like my subconscious fears processing? And I'm just processing and I just need to like let it do its thing. And I'll question it because there's not the container in the same way that numerology gives me, right? It's like with numerology, you calculate the ruling number and you get the same answer no matter what numerology practice you're following, no matter what book you're reading, no matter what teacher you spoke to learn. The answer is the answer, right? But once you get the answer, your magic comes in how does this feel in your energy field? What are you picking up on? And that's where we color in the lines. I talked about the analogy yesterday about we get the architectural blueprints of a house, right? That's the formula. It's like, oh, the room is 10 by 8. There's a fireplace over here. There's a window over here. There's a door over here. But it's this like two-dimensional black and white image. It doesn't tell you how it's going to feel to walk in that room. It doesn't tell you whether the fireplace makes the room drafty or cozy. It doesn't tell you whether the window receives the sun at the right angle. That is where your intuition colors that in, right? So the structure gives your intuition room to flow. And my favorite analogy for this is like the banks of the river. If you have a bank of a river that's solid, which is the formula, the water can flow. If it's leaky or loosey-goosey structure, you have a swamp, right? There's no water flowing. It's stagnant. It's unclear. It's messy. Okay, so that's the second C. So far we've done context and container. And the third C is the collective field. When you use a system like numerology, tarot, astrology, EFT tapping, Akashic records, any Reiki, any system that you use that's got some kind of methodology to it, you are tapping into a collective field. The field, the energetic field of numerology, it's a living, breathing field. And what that means is as we speak about numerology and think about numerology, we're contributing to that field. It's an upload happening, okay? And when I learn how to access that field, it's a download happening. I'm receiving from it. Okay. So if I am like, okay, this is the number, I'm looking into the number 7. Here's the context. The person's asking me about a new career or about this or whatever, a goal they're working on. Okay. So now we've got the context, which is like their question, the container, which is like the formula, right? So whatever, the ruling number formula, whatever thing I'm looking at. And then I've got the collective field. And this is where I can close my eyes and I can feel the energy. And that is where I'm going to receive in different ways. Now, everyone's unique in how they receive, right? These would be like your clair senses. Some people see stuff. Some people feel stuff. Some people sense stuff. Some people hear it, smell it, taste it. Any of the senses that you can use in the 3-dimension, you can also use with your intuition. And a lot of people will say, well, the only sense I have, like I would say probably the most common senses are like the felt sense, right? Like just having a feeling about something. How many people get like feelings? Is that most? I would say most of you probably get like a feeling, right? That was my first and strongest for the longest time. And it still probably is my dominant. But the more I've practiced, the more others have come in. Now I do get visuals. I did not get visuals in the past, right? I'll get an image. I did not get images in the past. I will also hear things. That's less common, but I'll hear things, right? And it's happened a few times. It's not happened that many times, but it's happened a handful of times where I've smelt things. And that is trippy because there's been a couple times where I'm like I smell something and then you're like, is it me? Is it like my water? Like, what am I smelling? Right? And you're going around your house trying to figure out what you're smelling. And then it's like, hold on, just chill for a second, Megan. Maybe ask. Maybe ask. It's like, oh, okay, that's what I'm smelling. And the wildest thing, I'll tell you the coolest story about this. My 7-year-old, some of you guys have heard me talk about my kids before. And so, my 7-year-old is a little unicorn. That kid is crazy. It's morning. We're getting ready for school. I put on some hard-boiled eggs to boil. And in my mind, I boil them for 10 minutes or whatever I do. And then I just turn the burner off and I go to drop the kids off at school. Okay. Get in the car, driving them to school. Normally we walk. We drove that day. And halfway to school, my daughter says to me, Mom, I smell eggs. My 7-year-old. And I was like, oh, I did not turn the pot off. We were in the car, like a kilometer away from home. And she goes, Mom, I smell eggs. I'm like, oh my God. Zip home. Sure enough, I left the burner on. Could you imagine if I'd gone all day and boiled a pot of eggs dry in my house? I could have lit my house on fire, especially because I have a gas stove. God. Anyways, wild. Side note, but that's how smell works. She smelt them. She's not old enough to understand that there's not eggs in the car. She's 7, right? But it's powerful. Okay. Any questions about using these 3 pieces to strengthen your intuition, whether it's in the context of numerology or any other modality? It'd be the same if you were asking me about tarot. It's, the same whether you're asking me about, I don't know, I'm not qualified to teach on any of the other ones, but I'm familiar with them because I've trained in them. Yeah. And some people get a mixture. Absolutely. And I would say the more you practice them, the more other ones will come in, especially when you are like, I want to be able to access this sense, right? And if you ask for it and you call it in and you practice it, it'll come in. Okay. So intuition development is context, container, collective, field. Number 2, how does numerology help us support our clients? Is it strengthens their self-trust. Okay. Arguably, pop in the chat if you don't agree with me, but it feels to me like probably the main reason why people can't get what they truly want in life. I'm not talking about pie in the sky dreams or it's like, oh yeah, I want $1 million. I want a yacht. I want this. I want that. But it's not actually what they want because they're not actually like doing anything about it. But if you truly want something, arguably the main reason you don't have it is lack of self-trust. Okay. Does anybody hear that and it's like, nope, it's another reason? Because I'm totally available for the good juicy conversation around it. And I see this all the time with myself. I see it with my clients, right? It's like, oh, well, I want to, offer more numerology readings. It's like, oh, but I don't know how to market. Or what if I promote something and nobody buys it? Or like technology keeps causing me issues. Or, what if I get somebody on the call with me and then I don't know the answer? Those are what I would say are most people's reasons that they tell me as to why they're not able to, let's say, sell more numerology readings. Well, what do you hear is the common theme of all those? They're not trusting themselves to figure it out. They're not trusting themselves to come up with the answer. They're not trusting themselves to move forward in a challenge and work through it, overcome it, find an answer, get a resource, whatever. And so they either stay where they are, overthinking and obsessing and not doing anything about it, or they make it overly complicated so that there becomes this massive hurdle to walk through in order to do it. Or they procrastinate because it's like, well, I need to feel this way. I need to do this. I need to have this. Then I can XYZ. And sometimes the things they say that they think they need in place first, it's debatable, right? It's debatable. So to me, this shows up as lack of self-trust. Now, let's go back to the book example that I mentioned earlier. If I went to a book coach and I was like, I want to write a book. And the book coach was like, okay, you need this project management plan and you need this 10-step process and here, da, 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 da. I would be like, holy man, this is overwhelming. But you're the book coach, you're the expert, you're telling me this is what I need to do. So what would I do? I would sit with it. Anybody else is like, I'm like, I need to sit with that for a minute. Anybody else do that? I'd sit with it. And then as a seven, I would stay sitting with it forever, get stuck and not move forward. Okay. I'm not saying sitting with it's a bad thing. There's a time and a place to sit with it. Right. But like, okay, then I would think to myself, I wanted to write a book. I've now sat with this and I've not moved forward. What is wrong with me? Why do I suck? Why can't I follow this system? It seems pretty straightforward. It's working for this other client. It's working for, like, if I read her testimonials page, it's worked for everybody else. She tells me this is the best way to do it, and yet here I am stuck and frozen. It must be my problem. And as soon as we do this, what's wrong with me? This must be my problem. That erodes self-trust. Now we start to carry this identity of like, I'm broken, can't write a book, I can't move forward, I'm uncoachable, I must have blocks around this. Has anyone taken that on where it's like somebody's tried to help them with something and whatever's come out of it, it's like the person's like, oh, well, you know, your subconscious mind must be blocking you, or you must have a block here. And you're like, okay, but like, what am I supposed to do with that? I have a block? I have a block now? Well, if you can't tell me what it is, why are you telling me I have a block? Because now I'm not, what am I supposed to do with this? Like my subconscious mind, like if I knew what it was, it wouldn't be unknown, right? If I knew what it was, it'd be in my conscious mind. I would know what it was and I could do something about it. But you're telling me it's like in this like mysterious subconscious mind. I don't know, you'll never know, we'll never know, and it's going to stay hidden in the dark forever. Like it's got to be to me the most frustrating and maddening advice or guidance. And I'm not saying that it might not be true, but as a client, what the heck am I supposed to do with this now? Right? Where, looking back at that book coaching scenario, if the coach had looked at me, this didn't happen, I'm making a scenario up here, but in my made up scenario, if a coach had looked at me and said, huh, I see that when I gave you the process, you got stuck and you couldn't get out of your stuckness. Let's take a peek at your energy grid and see, where is your energy dominant and where is it absent? Oh, look, you got a lot of energy in the emotional plane. Maybe we need to reconnect you with why you're writing the book in the first place, right? That would change everything. Or they looked at my really number and they're like, oh, well, you're a seven. Like sometimes you just need to jump in and do it. Like, could you book yourself into a hotel for a weekend where you've got no other responsibilities, book a spa visit, get a massage, and then write for 4 or 5 hours? Could you do that? And then it might be like, okay, I can do that. I'm not stuck anymore. Now I have a way through, right? To me, that still doesn't, whether it's the coach or me, we still don't know. Is it subconscious? Is it not subconscious? Is it a sabotage? Is it not we don't know. But at least now we have an empowering focus that will lean into my strengths versus having me ruminating on my perceived so-called failures. Not my problem. It's not my problem that my energy doesn't work that way. It's a gift that my energy works a certain way, right? Yes, yes, yes. Catch the replay if you have to go. Um, yeah, I love this. I'm reading in the chat. Okay, I'm so happy to know I'm not alone in this. And I mean, I know I've been coaching now for 11 years. I've been at this gig long enough to know that we all have the same stuff. Nobody's immune to it. We all have the same stuff. Uh, that can be. Could it, the question in the chat is, could it be we don't really want it and we just think we want it? And again, that takes a skilled space holder to ask the right questions to find out, is this a true desire? Is this an obligation? Is this an expectation? Right? And that's not necessarily something that you could tell from numerology, but you could tell by being good at asking questions and holding space for what comes up. It's also something you could tell from your intuition. And, you know, one of the practices that I talk about a lot in my numerology certification program is the concept of like body-centered listening or body-centered coaching, where your mirror neurons will fire based on what's happening in the person's body in front of you. So if you learn how to, use that as a tool in your coaching, not that I'm going to like project onto someone, but I can get curious as to what's happening with me when my client says whatever they said, right? Oh, I'm stuck about writing this book. It's like, okay, let me breathe with you for a minute, presence myself for a minute, and see what am I feeling as you say that, right? Ask some curious and open-ended questions about it and see where that goes. Okay, so self-trust. And can you see the impact on self-trust if my made up fictional book coaching scenario had happened and I would have done the thing where I booked the hotel and spent a day writing in isolation with no distractions and I actually like made progress on my book? Then I'd come back to my next coaching session or I'd text my coach at the end of the day and I'd be like, oh my God, like that was such good advice. Like, thank you. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I've made progress. I've gotten clarity. I've made some movement. I'm not stuck anymore. Like, I have something to go on now. That cultivates self-trust. So when you think of trust building with yourself, it's no different than trust building with another person, right? When we're building trust with other people, we think like, what do we need? It's like, well, I need that I can trust your word, meaning that like you say what you mean what you say. You follow through or check in on me if things change, right? It's like I honor you for who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly about you. I accept it and I love you anyways. And that makes me trust you. That makes you trust me. Well, the same is true with self-trust, right? Like you would never be friends with someone who every time you messed up was like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? You're totally broken and you can't do anything. Like you wouldn't be friends with them. It's like the opposite of trust, right? It's the same with ourselves. So knowing who we are, not expecting us to be different. Sure, I get, I call it number envy, where I'm like, I wish I could be more like this number because they're so good at da 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 da. But then I know it's like other people probably look at me and it's like, I wish, my friend who's the 4 says to me, you're so good at just like pulling it off at the last minute. I wish I could do that. I need like a month to prepare for anything. I'm like, yeah, there's good things about it. But then when I give myself a month to prepare, do I do anything with that month or do I just waste my time? Like, maybe, there's the pro and the con. There's both sides. Okay, so strengthening self-trust. I'm moving slowly today. I need to try to speed up my pace a bit. Is this good? Are you guys getting, is this insightful, usable? Okay, good. Love it. Number 3 is clients overcoming their shadows and their perceived limitations. So this is another way that numerology can help you support your clients. Oftentimes in the language we hear, the whole idea of like shadows, limiting belief, and sabotage, these come across to me often as like a problem to be fixed or something wrong to be solved. And I do not believe this at all. Hopefully we got that from yesterday's call, where energy runs on a band of polarity. There's an insecure expression and there's a secure expression. What a person might judge as like wrong, broken, problematic, sabotage, limiting belief is just an insecure expression. When that person learns to own how that energy expresses in them, it no longer is a sabotage, limiting belief, whatever other language people are using. It actually becomes a gift or a superpower, right? So the perfect example would be the stuck. Let's go back to the stuck energy with the 7, right? Well, 7s are supposed to be like really good at moving in the unknown and trusting their intuition in the unknown and taking the leap of faith when there's no proof or evidence that anything's going to turn out, right? So the stuck energy is actually a call to go inward. And as soon as a 7 understands that, because like oftentimes we're conditioned to be like, if you're stuck, go and ask for help. And I'm not saying don't ask for help. Of course you should ask for help. But as a 7, if you're stuck, don't expect the answer to come from somebody else's mouth. Sure, get support, get regulation, get guidance, but the answer has to come from within because you are literally coded to move in the unknown. And the very definition of the unknown is nobody else has walked its path before. Nobody knows the answers but you, right? And that lesson isn't like only for ruling number sevens. We all have that lesson at some point in our lives. And this is the other thing that is so powerful about numbers is you have the code you're born to embody. And that is like the dominant energy you're meant to carry and you're meant to embody. It's most of your gifts. It's what you are sought out for. It's what people need from you. But we all cycle through a personal year, right? So everyone's going to go through a personal 7 year once every 9 years. Everyone's going to go through a universal 7 year once every 9 years. Everyone's going to have months that are seven. For example, this year, everyone's going to have a 7 month in July. Everyone, not everyone, lots of people will have a 7 season. Some people might have a 7 day, right? It's going to crop up in different areas of your life. And whether that's your dominant, because that's part of your personal like birth chart, birth code energy, you still might have to learn the lesson at some point. It'll just be like more of a bite-sized lesson than a lifelong pattern. So, okay, looking for books and resources. I will absolutely share books and resources at the end of the call. First top of mind one that I recommend is by Dan Millman called The Life You Were Born to Live. I really like that book, actually. Yeah. Okay. So overcoming shadows and perceived limitations. The summary of that is there is no good or bad. There is simply polarity. Learning to work with the polarity is going to support your clients get out of self-judgment, shame. This is the whole story of broken and wrong, needing to be fixed, all of it. Number 4 is moving through inertia and stuck energy. This inevitably happens to people. They will start a growth journey or a healing journey, and they will get so far initially, and then they will fall in some type of hole. It happens. And if you don't understand that, you might think that, again, something is wrong with you. And if you don't understand that, you might not be able to like normalize, like that's just part of the process. But as numerologists, we can look at that and we can see what is the medicine they're needing in this hole, right? What is the medicine they're needing? And there's no straightforward answer. This is why I really encourage the intuitive numerology readings, because it's not like I can say, to get someone out of a hole, you always look at this part of their chart. It's not as straightforward as that, right? But there is places you can look. You can look at, obviously, the first place to look is always ruling number. If they're not in the empowered expression with their ruling number, that's going to make the hole worse, right? And as a 7, let me just say that there's been not just one hole of me learning to embrace the gifts of my 7, right? I had a hole, last year, and I had a hole a few years ago, and a hole probably 10 years before that. So, like we come in and out of them, and that's okay and normal. The other thing we can look at is where are they at in their personal year? Where are they at in their personal season? Where are they at with their relationship, with their energy, on how they're using their day energy and how that's being expressed. We can look at their energy grid to find out where there's a dominance of energy, where there's an absence of energy, and what's their relationship with that, right? These are all places we can look when we're coaching somebody through an ongoing challenge, or a challenge that there's not like a surface level answer to, right? If you feel like the pattern is repeating, then it's like, okay, let's just take a deeper look. The other thing that I love so much is helping people through those moments of feeling stuck or no progress. People will start to lose their motivation, right? It's like, well, this isn't working, so what's the point, right? So if it's not working, what's the point? It's like, well, what's your motivation? And for there, I will look to where is their energy dominant, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I have all the emotional plane numbers, so I have a dominance in emotional energy. So for me to be motivated, I need to be really connected to like the emotions behind what I'm doing. And if I'm not, I will lose interest. I don't care what the science says. I don't care what the studies say, right? Which would be like an intellectual. I need to know how it feels in like the felt emotional heart space. That's what I care about. So if someone's trying to motivate me, that's where they need to get me to, right? As my coach. And knowing that's really helpful because we don't all process energy and information the same way. So it's like, well, this works for me. I'm going to do it with all my clients. It's like, well, it'll work for my clients who have a similar energy that I do. It's not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. It's like knowing that, okay, well, let's come up with some examples then, right? Let's work through some ideas. And, when you're supporting clients who have different energy than you, obviously experience helps because you're like, well, I've helped other people before with a similar influence, and this is what they did. But also, it's asking questions because whether we're consciously aware of it or not, we know how we work, right? And so you can say to them, like, oh, you have dominance in the physical plane. So that means we need to get your body on board more. Like, what have you done in the past that's been like physical or embodied, bringing your body on board that really like lit you up? And get them to tell you. And then as the coach, you can be like, okay, let's, like one of the ones I did a few years ago, which I loved was because affirmations do nothing for me. Like, I don't even know. I can say them and I'm like, meh, does nothing. I started saying my affirmations while doing squats. Has anyone tried this before? Life changing. I had it printed out on a piece of paper on my bedside table, and I'd get out of bed in the morning, pajamas and all, and I would do 10 squats while I said my 10 affirmations. Life changing. Life changing, right? So yeah, what's physical? Um, Understanding divine timing is number 5. I love divine timing. Oftentimes when people are like, oh, divine timing, it's like kind of the brush off of like, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And I'm like, that is the most annoying advice ever. Like, I hate that advice. Hate it, hate it, hate it. Like, oh, just surrender and see what happens. And the universe will tell me and I'll get a sign. And I'm like, no, no. Like, the universe isn't going to boss you around. The universe isn't going to tell you what to do. The universe isn't going to force you. You have free will. And if you have shown no choice, desire, and interest, the universe isn't just going to like shove you off the cliff, anyways. That's not how it works. I will say there are certain things that you don't get as much say over. There are certain like karmic influences that will come in. But the whole thing of like, it's divine timing, the universe will tell me. I'm like, no. Divine timing is a flow and a pattern of energy that you can choose to work with or not work with. So if you imagine, let's go back to the river, the energy current is flowing in one particular direction. Okay. In 2025, it's flowing in the direction of the 9, which is all about, I kind of labeled this year as the sacred transition. It's about the up level. It's about letting go and releasing what doesn't serve you anymore. It's about detoxing from unhealthy patterns, particularly beliefs and thought patterns. And it's about up leveling yourself and your life so you can be prepared for what's next, which is why it's a sacred transition. So that's the way the river is flowing. Okay. If I get in the river with my canoe and I float with it, that's me trusting divine timing. But if I'm like, no, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm trying to paddle against the current, it's going to be exhausting. It's going to burn me out. Can I do it? Of course. You can totally paddle upstream, right? And I'm saying that as a person who loves to kayak and paddleboard. And I go whitewater kayaking every spring in the Kettle River, and we do paddle up against the current, catch the eddy, go down and swirl back up again, and it's super fun, right? Super fun. You don't really get very far though. You're kind of exhausted. It's kind of not easy. Working with the energy flow means here's what's happening around me. I'm not a victim to it. I'm not at the whim of it. But let me look at my goal. My goal is to grow my business. My goal is to improve my health. My goal is to focus on relationships. Whatever your goal is, it doesn't matter. How does this idea of the sacred transition and the up level work with my goal? How do I work with that and my goal together? That is where divine timing comes in. And I made a joke about this a couple years ago because I, as a numerologist, should have known better, but I did a launch in a 9 energy month. And it was one of the worst launches I ever did. Like, honestly, I should have known better. But in some ways, I'm like, well, as the 7, I walk the unknown path so I can show you guys what not to do. I'm just joking. But it was just that feeling of like, okay, Megan, if you ever needed to like really learn the lesson of trusting the flow of numbers, well, now you know. And so, and I wouldn't say to someone, don't launch in a 9 ever, but I would say, how you do this is going to be very different than how you would do it in a 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, right? What's going on for your client base is going to be very different in different energies. So when someone comes to you with a goal, you can say to them, all right, here's the energy we're working with now. It has these characteristics. How can we take these characteristics and work with your goal to move it forward? So being January, 1 energy month, I'm like, actually, this is the first January in a long time that vision boards actually made sense, right? Because it's 1. It's all about seed planting. So vision boards, intention setting, vision casting, daydreaming, doing numerology spreads, envisioning the future. It's perfect to do in the 1 energy month, right? February, it's like 2. 2 is connecting, collaborating, bringing in resources, brainstorming, coming together with somebody else to work through this. Support, mentorship, masterminding. It's like, okay, so if a client comes to me with any goal, whether it's health, relationship, money, business, career, doesn't matter. If they come to me in February, I'm going to say to them, this 2 energy month wants you to collaborate and bring in resources. What resources do you have in place already to help you with this goal? How can you leverage them? How can you work with them? Right? And then the next question is going to be, what contacts do you have? What connections do you have? Like they come to me to talk about health. Oh, do you have a gym buddy? Oh, do you need, you know, new equipment? What's the thing? What's the resource? What's the partnership? It's like the seed and the dirt coming together to create the chemical reaction that will allow the seed to start to germinate under the soil that you can't see. That's what the 2 is, right? When you understand each number, you can see how 1 through 9, and if you want to take into account 10 and 11, you can, they follow a natural manifestation cycle, a natural hero's journey. And so when you know where your client is on their own personal hero's journey, you understand the symptoms of where they are and you understand the medicine of that stage of their journey, right? So when in the certification program, when I teach people how to feel the numbers, we walk through that cycle, tapping into it from a felt sense so that you can feel what that feels like. So you don't need to read the books and the resources. Like, yes, I give books and resources because it's helpful to have a reference guide. But at the end of the day, I would rather use the formula, tap into that collective field, feel from that download what's the guidance with that number, right? And it's so powerful to be able to do that. So that's the divine timing, divine timing, divine cycle. Yeah, 9 year, being in a 9 energy year plus tower card, that's intense endings, right? And I used to teach tarot a lot. I don't teach it as much anymore. I will teach it kind of behind the scenes in my numerology class, because if you work with a deck that follows the kind of more traditional tarot deck closely, the numbers align, because a number is a number is a number, right? So like if you were to pull out your number 9 card in your deck, no, not if it's an oracle deck and not if it's like a very artistic tarot deck, but if it's one that follows the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, if it's one that follows, I would say I have a couple of decks I like. So if anyone wants to talk about that, let me know. But it will show you a picture of the Hermit. And the visuals on the card of the Hermit are very aligned with what you will sense and feel from the number 9 when you tap into the energy behind the 9, right? And so for people who like to have a visual image while they're learning to tap into the field, I show them how you can use tarot with numerology and like bring them together because they work really well together, actually. Not the oracle. I always feel like I need to clarify that because depending on the oracle author, they don't necessarily follow numerology. Okay. The last one, number 6. Are you guys still with me? You with me? Any questions? Anybody lost? It's helpful giving answers, hopefully. Okay. Number 6, bridging strategy and energy. If, as a coach, healer, guide, practitioner of some sort, if it's all strategy, you begin to lose a sense of the meaning and the energy, and it begins to feel like mechanical and disconnected. If it's all energy, number 1, if someone's not familiar with energy work, they don't know how to make sense of it and translate it. They want to know why, what's the result? What am I doing? How am I going to get there? Right? That sense of knowing the system, the strategy gives them a grounded sense of trust, which allows them to feel safe. And safety in your nervous system, being relaxed in your nervous system, not being on guard, is required for a client to go through any level of healing, growth, and change. If a person is uncertain, skeptical, not sure they trust the system, unclear as to how it's going to work for them, they're going to have a guard up. And if they have a guard up, even if they've paid you, like this has happened with paying clients, and this can happen even on the subconscious level. It's like, I want to change, I want this, but like there's a part of me that's hesitant, afraid, nervous, whatever. And it's our job as, the professional space holder to create that sense of safety and trust, which to me is why we can bridge both. We need both. We need the strategy. We need a methodology that we can lean on. We need some kind of structure so that the person's like, oh, I'm moving through a thing. Like I have a step 1, 2, 3 that I can kind of like lean on. But then I also need the energy. Otherwise, there's a disconnect. Ooh, I just had a ear thing going on. Sorry. Otherwise, there's a disconnect. If I don't feel the energy, it feels mechanical, it feels surface level. I don't feel seen, heard, and understood because I'm just like one of many on this like assembly line map, right? The assembly line map, it's kind of a weird phrase for it, but like your methodology, your 3-step process or 5-step process or whatever you have is necessary. You must have that. Without that, people cannot feel safe, right? They don't want to just like float on a cloud. I mean, maybe they do, but there's a reason why, and there's a starting point and an end point to floating on a cloud, right? There's a reason. And when you put both together, the strategy with the energy, that is where the power happens. And this is one of the things I really just love about numerology is because, like I mentioned with the hero's journey and the numbers, you can always see where people are, the pros and the cons of being there, how it's an opportunity, how it's a challenge, and then develop either through energy work, through your modality, whatever it is, the awareness of how to move through it. I think that's incredibly powerful about numerology, bridging strategy and energy is the power of observation bias. Okay. So what is observation bias? It's a scientific phenomenon where the belief system of the observer affects the outcome of a study. Okay. So placebo effect is an example, right? Like if you give me a pill and you're like, Megan, this pill is going to make you healthy. It's going to cure you of your illness. And it can be a pill of nothing. But if I eat it, believing it will make me healthy and cure my illness, right? The placebo effect is a very real thing. So in science, they do these things called like double blind studies where nobody knows if they're getting a placebo or a real drug or whatever to try to avoid observation bias. Observation bias is honestly one of the most powerful scientific phenomenons that we can use to our favor. Okay. As an intuitive, as somebody who can read and interpret energy, when you speak to the potential that's in your client's field, you make it more real and more accessible to them. So if you say to your client, just like, the reading I had, your sensitivity is a superpower. That makes that nebulous thing that was in my field since the day I was born gather density. And once it gathers density, it can actualize into 3D reality. It might happen in a day, might take 10 years. But when we observe potential and speak to potential, when there's a trusted relationship, you can help actualize that, especially if the person chooses it, right? I mean, obviously, you can say all kinds of stuff and the person doesn't choose it, whatever, for good and for bad, right? Like, how many times have you looked at, like, as a child, like the thing your teacher said on your report card and then you internalized it and then that, like, played out, right? It's like, for good and for bad. Let's use it for good. Let's speak the potential into being, right? And then it's like, instead of being messy with that potential or casual with that potential, the person can choose. I'm going to, like, I love how that numerologist I saw spoke to my leadership abilities. I've always felt nervous and scared about my leadership abilities, but like, maybe I'm going to read some books on leadership now. Maybe I'm going to attend a conference on leadership now. Maybe I'm going to speak up more and share my views more and see what happens. And by them here, you feeling the potential for them, you speaking it into existence, them choosing to act upon it, now it can actualize, right? This is one of the most powerful things I think about doing readings for people that makes me so happy. I have clients who never chose to study numerology, never chose to become a certified numerologist, but they come back every single year for a birthday reading for that exact reason, right? It's like, I look at their chart and I'm like, this is what I see for you. This is what is available to you. Here's the potentials of your year. And they can be like, I love the sound of that. Let me lean in, right? Or pass it by and whatever, right? But we love those clients who book in on a regular and consistent basis, right? Like, it just makes business so easy. Okay. Um, I know, it's 2 o'clock now. So again, I moved really slowly. But those of you who are able to stick around, I'm curious, would you guys like to learn a little bit more about my numerology trainings and how you can learn to take this a little bit deeper? You guys interested in learning more? Do not feel obligated to stay if you don't want to. But if you do, I would love to share with you. Um, Amazing. Okay, thank you. So first of all, I have been teaching numerology and certifying people in numerology since 2019, 6 years. I've had my certification program, which is like shocking to me. It has been 10 years. And I know because my son is 10, my numerology journey started 2 months before I got pregnant with him. And then through my pregnancy with him, I studied it. And from the day he was born on, I used it with clients, and he's 10. So I'm like 10 years of practicing as a numerologist, using it with readings, with business coaching, and using it to support people as a coach, right? My niche would be business coaching, but as with anything in life, there's a lot of overlaps, right? Business is not just business. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've now certified, like through my certification program, hundreds of students have come through it. I've taught numerology in settings like this, in other people's communities, as a guest in conferences and summits and things like that, to probably tens of thousands of people at this point. I do not even have to count that high. Absolutely. You can come and listen later, or you can DM me and I will send an email out with all the details as well. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I came to numerology from the standpoint of the analytical economist. That's how I came to it. And the more I delved into it, the more I recognized that the logical and the strategic is a critical aspect of life, but it's like yin and yang. Without the flow and intuition and understanding of the energy, the strategy is hollow and ineffective. They need to come together. And numerology for me brought in more of the intuitive flow. But I think the reason why I loved it so much as a modality is because it's grounded in formulas. I'm not making it up, right? Like if two people drop into the Akashic records, not knocking it, because I've trained in the Akashic records and I freaking love them. I use them all the time. In fact, I use them in numerology all the time. But if two people drop into the Akashic records on the same question for the same person, they're gonna get different visions for a reason. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But when you're learning a tool and you're building trust in a tool, that can sometimes create uncertainty because you're like, do I know it? Am I doing it? Am I making it up? Did I get it wrong? It's like, no, you didn't. The answer is 7. That's the answer. Okay, now let's drop in and feel how 7 feels for you, right? It adds a whole other dimension. Okay, so my unique approach to numerology, why people choose to work with me, is the idea of the intuitive numerology, is the idea of it's not about what the book says, it's not about Googling what 7 means. It's about learning to tap into the field of numerology, this living, breathing body, and feeling the energy for yourself so you don't need the book. Sure, you can use it as like training wheels on a bike. I give you resources that I wrote. I recommend a couple of books that you can buy, but I wrote my own resources because there's gaps in the resources as I see them. Most of the resources are written by men. Not knocking it, that's great. However, I feel like there is a need for a woman's voice in the numerology field. And I just wrote a bunch of my own resources because I'd be like, well, I like this, but it's missing that. I like that, but it's missing this. So I'm like, okay, here's my idea. I give you all of that so you can use that, right? And I teach you how to feel the numbers yourself. So whether or not you have the resources, you can feel them, which is really powerful when people call on you at like summits, events, in an audience, and they're like, oh, what does the number such and such mean? You don't need to be like, I need to look it up on my phone. You can be like, let me feel into it for a second. Here's what it means, right? So powerful. So, to me, numerology is the best way to support your clients. Absolute best way. What do I want to say? We're starting our next round of Practical Numerology Certification in February. There's a couple of things that are going to be really special about this round that I want to share you. Like I said, I've been teaching this for 6 years now. This is going to be the last time I teach it this way. Number 1, you work with me twice a week over a period of 2 months. Once a week, we meet and do a teaching call where I teach an element of numerology. I'm going to show you the outline. I think I'm going to show you the outline. Here we go. So the first class, I teach you how to feel the energy of the numbers. Okay. The second class, I teach you how to create a mini blueprint, mini soul blueprint. This is perfect for lead generation. This is perfect for discovery calls. This is perfect to do at markets and fairs. It's perfect to do as a guest or consultant in somebody else's program or training. This is perfect to do team building in person together if you're working with like team dynamics and understanding how a team forms, the strengths, the benefits, the gifts. It's really an off the cuff, back of the envelope type reading you can do. I've done them in airplanes and restaurants and coffee shops. The funnest one I've ever done was I was traveling to Mexico with my sister, and I did her chart on the airplane. And the woman next to me, and we were in the 3 seats, and then the woman next to me is like, "Ooh, can you do me?" And then the person across the aisle was like, "Ooh, can you do me?" I ended up doing, I don't even know how many numerology blueprints on the airplane, but it's like, okay, sure. Like, why not? Right? It's fun. It's a lead. It's great practice. It's really powerful. Okay. Then we learn how to do a detailed blueprint. A detailed blueprint is what you would do for like an hour-long reading, what you would charge for a reading, and I explain all the details of how to do it. Then we're going to go into forecasting. I'm going to explain how to forecast. So forecasting would be how energy moves through time, right? So what's the month? What's the day? What's the year? When and how do we work with those energies? Personal forecasting is how is my energy going to play out in any given day, month, year? We've already seen in the chat how certain people are like, oh, I have this day and this year. How is that going to, that is like a layered influence of personal forecasting. So I teach you how to look at these various pieces and how they interlay to create like a rich and dynamic reading. The thing I love the most about forecasting is it changes. So it means people have to come back. It's not a one-off, right? A birth chart, like your birth chart is what your birth chart is. It's the same. It's helpful to review it on a regular basis, but the forecasting changes all the time. And when people want to know things like, when's the best time to X, Y, and Z, or how do I achieve this goal? That's where you look at the forecasting energy to kind of map that out. The last call, we will create numerology offers. So we always have a really beautiful, intimate group where people will say, okay, this is what I'm doing, or this is the niche I have, or this is how I want to help people. And we'll break down like, okay, how can we use numerology to like build an offer for you, right? At the end of the day, I love business. And so I always infuse bits and pieces of business into numerology. Take it or leave it. You don't have to make a business out of it if that's not your jam. I encourage it because I love business and I love people to be financially sovereign and I like people to have financial opportunities, and starting my own business was the best thing I've ever done for myself. So that's me on my soapbox. But again, you don't have to listen. You can disregard it and use it in whichever way you want. I do teach a bonus training, a bonus business bootcamp training as well. There's also an extra couple of weeks built in that are like buffer weeks, integration weeks, where you can practice. Because if you do not practice, it will not stick. One of the things I bake into this is I connect you with a buddy, and I require you to meet with your buddy on a consistent basis to practice the readings. And this is huge. I was just talking to a numerologist I certified 3 years ago. Her and her buddies still meet every single week. And they talk about energy and numbers, but they talk about other stuff too, because they just became connected and those like soul sisters that support each other, right? So you need to practice because it's a felt sense to deliver a reading. And the safest place to deliver it is to somebody else who's working through it with you, right? Both the giving and the receiving. So through the certification, you have the option, do I want to get certified or not? Not everyone wants to, but there is a certain number of requirements to fulfill the certification, including the buddy readings, delivering a numerology reading, learning the aspects of the chart, like I'll be sharing here, and filling out a little assessment and then hopping on a call with me. So it's not hard and complicated. If you have the intention to do it, you will do it. It's not like I've ever had someone who like failed their certification. And I do everything in my power to make it as easy as possible because I want you to get certified. I want you to use it. I want you to feel proud of it. I want you to feel accomplished through it. The benefit of being part of this community is it's a community. Once you're in, you're in. You can attend any future trainings I offer for free. I do not charge alumni fees. I do not charge reattendance fees. There's people on this call who've been studying with me for years and still come because they're learning and they want to stay tapped in. And that to me is so important because I want you to know if you're doing someone's chart and you run into something and you don't know how to handle it, you have a community you can turn to and you can say, this is what's coming up in this chart. I don't know what to do. Advice, guidance, how do you see things? And it's so cool because when you look in the community, you'll see people who have posted pictures of a chart and you'll see people weighing in and saying, oh, I see this. Oh, I see that. Try asking these questions, try asking that. And it helps you to recognize, like, as a solo entrepreneur or practitioner or service provider, you're not alone. You are not alone. You have a space to go. You have support. You have people who have your back, who all have unique and different perspectives, right? Like it's not just me. I'll weigh in, of course, but having other people who are practicing it and using it in different ways. Like I learned so much from those threads, right? We all do. So that's really powerful. The certification program itself is $19.97, so $2,000. You can pay it up front and you will get a number of bonuses. Or if you want to pay it over time, there's a payment program. I think it works out to be about $333 per month over 6 months if you want to do it that way. Either way, whether you pay up front or you do a payment program, either way, I will get you to book in a numerology reading with me. So that's part of the bonuses. You get a one-on-one reading with me where we will dive into your chart together. And I normally charge $300 for my readings. So that's a huge savings for you to kind of get that up front. But I think it's so important because if you get the reading from me first, then you know this is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to play out. This is what's available. This is what's possible for me, right? Um, is there anything I have not covered? Oh, do you guys want to hear what people are doing with the numerology to kind of get some ideas of how people are using it? Okay. Um, I do have some, I don't know, I'm not to put you on the spot, but Tina, do you want to share how you use it since you have been practicing for so long now? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You can say no if you don't want to.
Yeah, not putting me on the spot. Yeah, right. I use numerology in a couple of different ways, but the one that really hit home for me when I got started in the practice was the shift in my family when I realized that I could compare my chart and my children's charts. And both of my children are autistic, and the fights and the battles that constantly went on in this house were exhausting. Um, to be quite honest, it was burnout material. And within, I would say probably within about 2 weeks of working with the numbers and starting with the basic blueprint that Megan was teaching, I was able to sit down with them with their charts and their energy grid and go, hey guys, this is where your charts overlap. This is how you can get along. This is why you're conflicting. This is where I can kind of come into play and buffer it, but this is where you guys need to learn how to manage it yourselves as well. And it did more for my home than therapy in and out with counselors. It did more for my kids than me standing there pulling my hair out by the roots, going, look at you, would you just stop it? So it's yeah, balance, harmony, ease of flow, um, just very um, became a very peaceful, right? I'm not saying that we never have our conflicts, but it's not to the degree it was, which is absolutely wonderful. How I'm using it now, I have taken other training. I just got my certification as a transition coach, and I blend it in with the EFT, the emotional freedom technique. So if you're trying to get from point A to point B and you don't know how to get there, that's where we take a look at your numerology. That's where we take a look at your EFT, and we look at, here's the shadow piece. How can we rewire the thought process to get to where you want to go? And so far, I'm having a lot of fun with it. And Megan, I don't know if you noticed, but I do have a website posted now.
Oh my God,
I
post.
figured that I would throw that at you.
Yes, throw it in the chat so everyone can check it out. I'm so proud of you for getting your website up and running.
So it's been a journey. I can't say it's been a short journey, but it's been a wonderful journey. And I'm just taking my time. I've learned through my own chart. I'm a 33/6, and I've learned through my own chart that I need to slow down a little bit and throw away the perfectionism, but I'm always asking questions. And yeah, without giving away too much, I do have that a piece in the energy chart that literally makes sense as to why I'm always the one that's asking the questions and why I'm going deep and why I'm not quite happy with the surface and why I will push you to go, hey, let's take that a little bit deeper.
Mhm. That's
Right. So lots of ways to use it.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. Pop your website in the chat so everyone can check it out. I appreciate that so much. So yeah, that's a great example. I've got a number of people who've integrated into their businesses. So some of you know Anne Marie McKenzie. She studied with Danielle Laporte and was a did the heart-centered leadership training through Danielle Laporte. But the missing piece in her business was making friends with numbers. And it's funny because when she set that intention, she thought it was like money numbers. And then she came across numerology with me and studied numerology with me, and her business completely took off. She actually, I mean, I always tell people within a month of taking this course, you can do readings within a month. And she took it to heart and she actually paid for the course in full within the first month of the training because she just started doing readings right off the bat. And you can start doing readings within a month. So she pre-booked a bunch of readings and sold $2,000 worth of readings in a month, right? It's super doable if you have an audience. If you don't have an audience, obviously you're going to need to learn on like build some marketing techniques. But the cool thing about that is she's now integrated numerology into how she coaches. And so I kind of gave lots of examples around that before, but she does business heart-centered leadership and business coaching now. So how people move forward in their business based on their numerology. And she does a business plan that's informed by numerology, which is genius. Kirsten Foss is another one. She coaches people who have spa businesses. She has a incredible podcast for spa business owners. And again, she uses numerology to help them develop systems that work with their energy, not a one size fits all, right? What's another example? Jessica Serrato, she built a numerology membership program, which is incredibly successful. And she has a massive wait list. And she gets invited to speak at retreats and podcasts and events on numerology all the time. My friend Carly, who, she's one of my besties at this point, but we met 8+ years ago because she's an Ayurvedic coach, an Ayurvedic health coach. I hired her to help me with postpartum issues with my third baby. And then in me hiring her to help me with postpartum health issues, she learned about numerology and hired me to help her with numerology. And we took her Ayurvedic health coaching business and skyrocketed it to like she was doing 6 figures a year. Her testimonials on my website. I can't remember all the numbers, but if you go on the website, you'll see all the information. Yeah, so that was incredible. She's the four that I always talk about because, of course, I took her program, she took my program. We live in the same town. We became besties. That's basically what happened there. Yeah. So if you're hearing this, I also have financial planners actually who use it. I think I might have gave this example on day one. Because of licensing, they cannot use it in front of their clients, nor would they probably want to, right? But if you are the kind of person that has to have difficult money conversations with people, it's helpful to know how their energy works so you know how to broach these difficult conversations. Are they motivated by the intellect where they need the facts, the figures, the data, the research? Are they motivated at the emotional level where they need to be more connected with why they're doing this in the first place? Are they motivated at the physical level where they need to have like something physical and tangible and concrete around how they're doing things, right? So the way you approach difficult conversations, the way you approach sales conversations. In all of my discovery calls with people, I get them to fill out a calendar appointment, right? And so it's like name, email, birth date. It's just a required thing. And so I do everyone's mini blueprint before I hop on a call with them because I want to know what are their gifts? What are their strengths? How can I support them to be their best self, right? Even if they're talking to me about something totally unrelated. If someone comes to me and is like, "Oh, I want to do an event with you." I have, if you're a Kelowna person or a local to Kelowna person, I've got a Ostara event coming up that I'm going to do an in-person event. So ask me about the details. We're still planning it, but it's going to be at the end of March. And so the woman who I'm collaborating with, it's like, I want to look at her birthday to find out what strengths she brings to the table so that I know where my strengths can complement her and where she's going to shine and where I can bring my genius. And so together we can create something amazing, right? And she is such a powerful intuitive that we're going to focus on her doing a lot of the energy work. And I'm going to provide the structure by talking about the numerology of the season and providing some journal prompts, reflections, and intention settings because I can come in with the structure and the physical being the 7, right? So knowing how to bring these pieces to the table. Oftentimes, when I structure my speaking engagements, my workshops, I look at the numbers. It's like, what do I want to talk about? I don't know. And people will be like, oh, just talk about whatever you want. It's like, okay, well, obviously, I have core messaging that I'm always going to talk about. I'm always going to talk about intuition. I'm always going to talk about trusting yourself. I'm always, there's certain pieces I'm always going to bring in. But if I'm not sure how to like frame it or couch it or what's going to be top of mind for people, I'm going to look at the energy of the month and the day. And I'm going to bring that in, whether I speak to it directly or indirectly. Because let's say I'm doing a talk and it's 9 energy. I'm going to talk about releasing, letting go. We're going to do a burning ceremony, like whatever, right? And if it's not like a witchy woo gathering where we can pull out the cauldron and burn stuff, then I might talk about limiting beliefs and how it's time to evolve your mindset, right? That can be a very like more, I'm gonna say generic, but it's not generic. It's helpful, but it's not, it doesn't have to be metaphysics. It can be grounded and tangible and practical. And that's helpful in a corporate setting, a workshop setting, anywhere, right? And so it really just gives you a framework to look at the energy underneath what's happening. I think my favorite piece in all of it that I get told from people over and over and over again is how important the authenticity is. And so many people think they're being authentic, but they don't always know how to translate that, right? We all want to be authentic, but it's like we're also trying to be and do our best. But what does that mean to be and do your best? Like you can look at people who you think are doing really well and model them, and that's good. Like the intentions are good, but also subtly, it may or may not be a reflection of your true energetic code. And I get told over and over and over again that people can feel that from me and feel that from so many of the people who have helped teach how to embody their codes in that way because you become unapologetic, right? Like even in hearing Tina describe how it relates to how she parents and how she leads as a coach now and what it means to be a 33-6 to her, she doesn't have to be, oh, this about me. It's like, no, this is what I am and this is what I bring to the table. And I'm going to take you deep, whether you like it or not. And if you're not available for it, you're not my client. Right. And she's authentic and straightforward in that. And that's a gift that we need. So I've been rambling on and on. I have to go pick up my kids from school. But any of you who want to talk about whether this is a fit for you, how it would fit in your business, where you can incorporate in your practice, please reply to one of my emails or send me a DM. We can always hop on a quick little chat. No obligation. I'm not the hard pressure sales type. I want what's best for you at the end of the day. So let's talk through it, see how it could work. If that's questions you have, if you want to know about ROI, if you want to know about payment programs, if you want to see more testimonials, I will have information I can show you, or you can reach out and we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, I'm just super grateful you were here with me. Coach for her, not pushy. Thank you, Tina. I appreciate it. Um, at the end of the day, I'm in it for the long haul. So I want my people to be successful. And I have like this like super secret, not so secret motivation of making everyone fluent and literate in energy because I know that's going to make the world a better place. And that's what I want. So I got to run to pick up. Otherwise, I would ask you what your takeaways were. Since I can't ask you on the call, email me, reply to my email and let me know what was your number one takeaway from today's call. What are you getting? What was your aha? And tomorrow, we're going to talk about more about the money, business, and abundance piece with numerology. So come to tomorrow's call if you're interested in like some of the business aspects. All right. So good. Mwah. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully, we'll see you tomorrow and see you in the DMs too. Okay. Mwah. Bye.